Responsibility is one of the most powerful forces that can transform a human being because it demands that you recognize the weight of your existence and accept that your actions have consequences. To take responsibility is to confront the chaos of life directly instead of retreating into avoidance, excuses, or blame. Many people attempt to sidestep responsibility because it feels heavy, it feels unfair, and it feels overwhelming. But paradoxically, it is in carrying the burden willingly that people find strength, meaning, and even dignity. Without responsibility, life becomes hollow and directionless because responsibility gives shape to your actions and connects them to something greater than immediate gratification. When you decide to take responsibility, you begin by acknowledging that life is difficult and that suffering is inevitable. There will be pain, loss, injustice, and failure. No one escapes these realities. The choice you have is whether you will crumble beneath them or rise to face them. Responsibility is the decision to rise. It does not mean you are guaranteed success or freedom from suffering, but it means that you willingly shoulder your share of the burden so that you can contribute, grow, and stand upright in the face of adversity. On the most basic level, responsibility starts with yourself. You are responsible for your health, for your knowledge, for your words, for your habits, and for your actions. Too many people blame society, family, or circumstance for the state of their lives, but this neglects the fact that each person has agency. You might not control everything that happens to you, but you absolutely control how you respond to it. If you refuse to take responsibility for yourself, you deny your own potential. You remain stuck in resentment, anger, or despair, waiting for someone else to save you. But when you take responsibility, you move from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active participant in your own destiny. Responsibility also extends outward. It is not enough to only manage yourself because human beings live in networks of relationships, family, friendships, communities, and nations. Each of these requires individuals to carry responsibility for them to function. A parent must take responsibility for raising their children properly, instilling discipline, values, and love. A friend must take responsibility for loyalty and honesty. A citizen must take responsibility for contributing positively to society, whether through work, integrity, or civic engagement. When people abandon these responsibilities, everything begins to fracture. Families collapse, trust evaporates, institutions weaken, and individuals are left lost. But when responsibility is embraced, order is restored. And people thrive in environments where everyone is contributing rather than withdrawing. Taking responsibility does not mean becoming a tyrant or trying to control everything, because responsibility is not about domination. It is about service, about willingly carrying weight that could crush you, but doing so because it makes you stronger. Responsibility can be terrifying because it reveals how much depends on you. It requires sacrifice. You cannot live purely for your own desires if you are truly responsible, because others are counting on you. But the sacrifice is what makes responsibility noble. By choosing responsibility, you exchange fleeting comfort for long-term meaning. You choose to discipline yourself rather than indulge your whims. You choose to act with courage rather than shrink in fear. This process begins in the smallest areas of life. Clean your room. Manage your time. Keep your word. Care for your body. These simple acts of responsibility might seem trivial, but they are foundational. They teach you discipline, reliability, and respect. From there, you can expand into greater responsibilities, caring for a partner, raising children, building a career, supporting your community. Each level requires more from you, but it also gives more back. The more responsibility you accept, the more meaningful your life becomes, because meaning is directly tied to the weight you are willing to carry. There is also a moral dimension to responsibility. Without it, you fall into nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, that life is empty. But when you assume responsibility, you affirm that your actions matter, that your life matters, and that what you do has significance. You align yourself with truth, with order, and with the potential for good. You become someone others can rely on, someone capable of weathering chaos without falling apart. That reliability is not only beneficial to those around you, it also builds your own confidence and self-respect. You prove to yourself that you are strong enough to endure, and that strength fuels further growth. Discipline is the framework that allows human potential to take form, because without it, the chaos of desire and distraction will always overwhelm effort. People often imagine that motivation is what drives improvement, but motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes depending on mood, circumstance, or emotion. Discipline, by contrast, is steady. It does not ask whether you feel like doing the hard thing. It simply demands that you do it. This is why discipline is so powerful. It transforms intentions into consistent action, and consistent action is the foundation of mastery and transformation. Discipline begins with structure. You cannot wander aimlessly and expect to reach a destination worth reaching. Structured life is not a prison, but a path. When you decide that your time has value, you begin to order your day in a way that reflects your priorities. You wake up at a certain hour, you set aside time for work, you limit distractions, and you push yourself to meet obligations rather than postponing them. This is not glamorous work, but it builds character. Each time you follow through on a disciplined choice, you strengthen the part of yourself that is reliable and trustworthy. Without discipline, you betray yourself because you say one thing and do another. With discipline, you align your actions with your values. And it is important to recognize that discipline often feels like sacrifice. You are constantly trading the easy pleasure of the present for the greater good of the future. You resist the temptation to sleep in so you can strengthen your body through exercise. You turn down the impulse to waste time scrolling endlessly so you can study, learn, or build a skill. You say no to indulgences so you can pursue long-term goals. Each of these decisions costs you something now, but it buys you something greater later. Discipline is the art of delayed gratification, and those who practice it consistently end up with lives far richer than those who only chase short-term comfort. But discipline is not only about external behaviors, it is also about mastering the mind. Thoughts can wander into resentment, laziness, or despair, and if you lack discipline, you let those thoughts dominate you. A disciplined mind catches itself in negativity and redirects toward responsibility and constructive action. Discipline in speech means telling the truth instead of taking the easy route of deception. Discipline in relationships means honoring commitments and showing up, even when it is inconvenient. Discipline in work means doing your duty, not just when eyes are on you, but especially when no one is watching. Over time, discipline builds confidence. When you know that you can rely on yourself to follow through, you become less anxious about the future. You recognize that no matter what difficulties arise, you have the capacity to endure and persist. This creates resilience, and resilience is one of the most valuable traits a person can have. Life will always test you with challenges beyond your control. Discipline ensures that you have prepared yourself to meet those challenges. The paradox of discipline is that it feels restrictive in the moment, but ultimately creates freedom. A person without discipline is a slave to impulse. They are dragged around by cravings, moods, and external pressures. They may call this freedom, but in reality, they are controlled by whatever tempts them in the moment. True freedom comes from the ability to act in alignment with what you truly value, not what you happen to desire right now. Discipline provides that ability. It gives you mastery over yourself so that you are not constantly at the mercy of your own weaknesses. Discipline also creates order, and order allows you to confront chaos. Without order, the smallest problems spiral into overwhelming crises. With discipline, you have the tools to break problems down, address them systematically, and move forward. This is why discipline is so often linked with success. It is not that disciplined people avoid problems, but that they face them head on instead of avoiding them. And through this repeated confrontation, they grow stronger. Discipline does not come naturally. It must be trained like a muscle. You start small with one act of self-control, and then you build upon it. Perhaps it begins with making your bed each morning, or setting aside an hour for reading or writing down your goals. Each time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a disciplined character, and a disciplined character is unstoppable. You can endure hardship, resist temptation, and keep moving forward even when progress feels impossible. Order is the structure that holds life together and gives it stability. Because without order, existence becomes chaotic, unpredictable, and unbearable. Human beings are wired to seek order because it allows them to navigate reality with clarity. Order is the known, the familiar, the patterns that guide daily living and make sense of the world. Without it, every moment would feel overwhelming, as though you were drowning in uncertainty. But too much order leads to stagnation, while too little leads to destruction. The task of life is to find balance between order and chaos, to create enough structure to provide stability while leaving enough openness for growth and discovery. Order begins with the simplest aspects of life. When you arrange your environment, when you keep your room clean, when you organize your schedule, you impose order on the chaos around you. These small actions seem trivial, but they create a sense of control and stability that radiates outward. A messy room is not just about clutter. It reflects a mind that has allowed disorder to creep in. By cleaning, by arranging, by setting things right, you make a statement. You will not be overwhelmed by chaos. You will establish a foundation from which to build. This principle extends beyond physical space into habits, relationships, and goals. Order in habits means consistency in action, eating properly, exercising regularly, committing to learning, keeping promises. These structures shape who you are. Order in relationships means treating people with respect, maintaining honesty, and setting boundaries. Without these, relationships collapse into manipulation, dishonesty, and resentment. Order in goals means knowing what you are aiming at. You cannot live well if you are aimless. To create order is to set a target, to choose a direction, and to align your actions toward it. But order is not simply personal convenience. It has a deep moral and psychological dimension. A life without order quickly descends into chaos. Addiction, despair, laziness, meaninglessness. People who refuse to establish order become trapped in cycles of self-destruction because they are at the mercy of impulse and circumstance. On the other hand, those who impose order on themselves develop resilience. They can withstand challenges because they are not constantly battling disarray in their own lives. They have stability from which to confront the unpredictable storms that inevitably arrive. However, order alone is not sufficient. Too much order breeds rigidity, dogma, and tyranny. If you cling too tightly to order, you become resistant to change and blind to new possibilities. Life demands adaptability, because chaos, though frightening, also contains opportunity. The unknown is where growth happens, where creativity emerges, where transformation is possible. To live properly is to stand with one foot in order and one foot in chaos. To maintain stability while venturing into the unknown enough to evolve. For example, imagine someone who insists on complete order in every aspect of life. They never take risks, never explore new opportunities, never question their own assumptions. They become stagnant, predictable, and brittle, unable to adapt when change inevitably comes. On the other hand, imagine someone who rejects order entirely, who lives only in chaos. Their life becomes a mess of unfinished tasks, unstable relationships, and constant crisis. The ideal is in the middle, to establish enough order to have stability, but enough chaos to have growth. Order also gives meaning to responsibility. You cannot take responsibility for yourself, your family, or your community without establishing order first. Chaos cannot be managed without a framework. To be a reliable parent, for instance, you must impose routines and structure on your household. To succeed in work, you must follow systems and deadlines. To maintain mental stability, you must order your thoughts through reflection, honesty, and discipline. In each case, order is the scaffolding that allows responsibility to function. On a larger scale, civilizations rise and fall on the balance between order and chaos. Societies without order collapse into violence, corruption, and decay. Societies with too much order suffocate innovation and freedom. The healthiest cultures maintain rules and traditions that provide stability while allowing space for creativity and adaptation. This balance is difficult to maintain, but it is essential. And it begins at the individual level, with each person creating order in their own lives. Order also gives you a sense of progress. When you impose order, you can measure improvement. You can track how far you have come and what still needs to be done. Without order, progress is invisible because everything is confusion and disorder. A clear plan, a structured schedule, a set of priorities, these make it possible to move forward steadily, even when life is difficult. They anchor you when everything else feels uncertain. In the end, order is not about controlling everything. It is about creating a foundation that allows you to face the uncontrollable. You cannot eliminate chaos, nor should you, but you can prepare yourself to confront it. You do this by establishing order in the areas you can control: your habits, your environment, your goals, your relationships. By bringing order to these, you strengthen yourself so that you can step into the unknown with courage. It is in this balance between the security of order and the challenge of chaos that the most meaningful life is found. Potential is one of the most profound aspects of human existence because it represents what you could become if you dedicated yourself fully to growth, discipline, and responsibility. Every individual carries within them possibilities that far exceed what they currently embody. The tragedy is that many people never realize their potential either because they underestimate themselves, because they avoid the effort required to grow, or because they allow fear and comfort to dictate their lives. To recognize your potential is to acknowledge that you are not yet who you could be, and that gap between who you are and who you could become should inspire both humility and ambition. Potential is not static, it is dynamic. It shifts and expands depending on the choices you make. Each decision opens certain doors and closes others. When you choose responsibility, discipline, and truth, you move closer to your highest potential. When you choose laziness, dishonesty, and avoidance, you diminish it. What this means is that your life is shaped, moment by moment, by the way you orient yourself toward your own capacity. You are constantly becoming something, and whether you rise upward or spiral downward depends on how you engage with your potential. The awareness of potential can be overwhelming because it suggests that you are accountable for much more than you admit. People often shield themselves from this awareness by pretending that their current state is all they are capable of. They convince themselves that greatness is for others, that discipline is too hard, that responsibility is too heavy. This self-deception protects them from the discomfort of striving, but it also robs them of meaning. When you accept mediocrity, you betray the part of yourself that longs to become more. You avoid pain, but you also avoid growth. To pursue potential requires courage because it means stepping into the unknown. You cannot know exactly who you will become if you devote yourself to growth. That uncertainty is frightening, but it is also what makes the journey worthwhile. Imagine a seed. Within it lies the potential for a massive tree, but only if it is planted, watered, and nurtured. Left untouched, it remains nothing more than a seed. Human beings are the same. Within each person lies the capacity for wisdom, strength, creativity, leadership, and resilience. But those capacities remain dormant unless cultivated through effort and sacrifice. The pursuit of potential demands sacrifice because to become who you could be, you must give up who you currently are. That means letting go of habits that waste your time, beliefs that hold you back, and excuses that keep you comfortable. Every step toward your potential requires shedding an old version of yourself. This process is painful because it involves confronting your flaws honestly, but the alternative is far worse, a life where you never discover how much you were truly capable of. Potential is also relational. Your growth does not only affect you, it affects everyone around you. When you cultivate your abilities, you become someone others can rely on. Your family benefits, your community benefits, even society as a whole benefits. The more you develop yourself, the more value you bring into the world. This creates a ripple effect. By striving toward your potential, you inspire others to do the same. One person who steps into their potential can transform not just their own life, but the lives of countless others. It is worth noting that potential is not reached all at once. It is unlocked gradually through small, consistent improvements. You start with what is nearest, you organize your life, you master your habits, you learn new skills, you discipline your mind. As you achieve these small victories, new possibilities emerge. Your potential expands as you prove to yourself that you are capable of more. What once seemed impossible becomes attainable because you have grown into the kind of person who can handle it. This process is endless because human beings can always improve. No matter how far you rise, there is always further potential waiting to be realized. The pursuit of potential is also what gives life meaning. Comfort, pleasure, and ease are fleeting. They do not satisfy the deeper longing within the human spirit. Meaning comes from growth, from striving, from confronting difficulty and emerging stronger. When you move toward your potential, you feel that your life matters. because you are embodying the best within you. This sense of purpose is far more fulfilling than the shallow distractions that dominate so much of modern life. Ultimately, potential is a responsibility. To waste it is not just to harm yourself, but to neglect the contribution you could have made to the world. The fact that you carry within you capacities yet unrealized is both a gift and a demand. It means that you are called to become more, not for your sake alone, but for the sake of those who depend on you. To ignore this call is to live below your possibilities, to accept a diminished life when a greater one was available. To answer it is to step onto the path of growth, meaning, and transformation, meaning, is what gives human life depth and direction. Because without meaning, existence reduces itself to a cycle of fleeting pleasures and unavoidable suffering. People can endure incredible hardship when they know that what they are doing matters, but even the smallest inconveniences become unbearable if life feels empty. Meaning is not the same as happiness. Happiness is temporary, dependent on circumstance, and fragile in the face of chaos. Meaning, on the other hand, is stable. It sustains you through suffering because it transforms that suffering into something purposeful. The pursuit of meaning is therefore not optional. It is essential if you want to live in a way that is bearable and fulfilling. Meaning emerges when you align your actions with responsibility. When you willingly carry burdens, when you strive to make things better rather than worse, you feel that your life has weight. This is why so many of the things that bring deep meaning are also difficult. Raising children, caring for family, dedicating yourself to a career, serving your community, none of these are easy, but they provide significance that trivial pleasures cannot match. It is through sacrifice and responsibility that people discover the richest forms of meaning. The search for meaning often begins when people confront suffering. Suffering strips away illusions and forces you to ask serious questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? What matters enough to justify the pain of existence? If you avoid these questions, you end up in despair, resentment, or nihilism, believing that nothing matters. But if you face them honestly, you realize that the antidote to suffering is not comfort or distraction, but purpose. To live meaningfully is to say, the hardship is worth it because it serves something greater than myself. Meaning also requires truth. You cannot build a meaningful life on lies because falsehood eventually collapses under its own weight. People often lie to protect themselves from pain or to gain short-term advantage, but those lies corrode trust, relationships, and even the self. When you refuse to confront reality, you cut yourself off from meaning, because meaning only arises in alignment with what is true. Telling the truth, even when it is difficult, is a way of orienting yourself toward reality and grounding your life in something solid. Another aspect of meaning is growth. Life becomes meaningful when you are moving toward your potential, when you are striving to become who you could be. Stagnation leads to despair because it denies the innate human need for progress. To set a goal, to pursue it with discipline, and to witness your own transformation along the way creates a profound sense of meaning. The struggle itself becomes valuable, not just the outcome. It's the outcome. When you engage fully in growth, you see that meaning is not something you wait to find. It is something you generate through responsibility and effort. Meaning is also relational. It is discovered not in isolation, but in connection to others. To serve, to love, to contribute, these are pathways to meaning. A life devoted solely to the self quickly becomes shallow. But when your actions make the lives of others better, you feel a significance that goes beyond your own limited existence. Parents know this when they sacrifice for their children. Leaders know it when they dedicate themselves to their communities. And friends know it when they remain loyal in times of hardship. Meaning expands as you take on responsibilities that extend beyond your own desires. Yet meaning is not given automatically. It must be chosen. Every day presents the choice between aimlessness and responsibility, between distraction and purpose. You decide whether you will spend your time chasing comfort or building something that lasts. Many avoid meaning because it is heavy. It requires discipline, sacrifice, and honesty. But the paradox is that the weight of meaning, though difficult, is far lighter than the emptiness of a meaningless life. When you refuse responsibility, when you avoid purpose, the chaos of existence crushes you. But when you embrace meaning, you find that you can carry far more than you imagined. Meaning also involves courage because it asks you to face suffering directly instead of hiding from it. You cannot find meaning by denying pain. You find it by integrating pain into a higher purpose. Think of someone who dedicates their suffering to helping others. The addict who turns recovery into service. The parent who endures hardship for the sake of their child. The thinker who wrestles with despair to bring wisdom to the world. In each case, suffering becomes meaningful because it is transformed into contribution. Ultimately, meaning is the antidote to chaos and despair. It anchors you when everything else feels unstable. It directs your energy, shapes your actions, and transforms suffering into growth. It calls you to responsibility, to truth, to service, and to courage. Meaning does not eliminate pain, but it makes the pain worth enduring. Because it connects your life to something larger than yourself. Transformation is the process of becoming something greater than you currently are, and it is at the heart of growth, meaning, and human potential. To transform is not simply to change superficially, but to fundamentally alter the way you see yourself, the way you act, and the way you engage with the world. Transformation requires confronting the inadequacies of the present and willingly sacrificing them for the possibility of a stronger, wiser, and more capable future. It is the ongoing process of death and rebirth where old habits, beliefs, and limitations must die so that new possibilities can take their place. Transformation always begins with recognition. You must first acknowledge that you are not yet who you could be. This realization is uncomfortable, even painful, because it forces you to confront your flaws, your failures, and your wasted potential. Many people resist transformation precisely because of this discomfort. They prefer to remain as they are, even if it means settling for mediocrity, because transformation requires honesty and courage. But if you refuse to acknowledge the gap between your current self and your potential self, you cannot grow. Transformation starts with humility, the acceptance that you are unfinished and in need of development. Once you recognize this need, the process of transformation demands sacrifice. You cannot become something new while clinging to everything old. Habits that waste your time, beliefs that limit you, excuses that shield you from effort, all of these must be given up. This is why transformation often feels like loss. You let go of comfort, familiarity, and the parts of yourself that feel safe. But in doing so, you create space for growth. The paradox is that you must give up who you are in order to become who you could be. This sacrifice is difficult, but it is also noble because it allows you to rise into a better version of yourself. Transformation also requires struggle. Growth does not happen in comfort, but in resistance. Just as muscles grow stronger under the strain of lifting weight, character grows stronger through discipline, responsibility, and adversity. The obstacles you face are not barriers to transformation, but the very tools that shape it. When you fail and rise again, when you endure hardship without breaking, when you push yourself beyond what you thought possible, you transform. Struggle refines you, removing weakness and revealing strength. Without it, transformation is impossible. At its core, transformation is about alignment. It is aligning your actions with your values, your words with truth, and your life with meaning. Each time you act with integrity, discipline, and courage, you transform into someone who is more reliable, more capable, and more resilient. Transformation is not an event, but a continual process of alignment, where every choice either strengthens or weakens the person you are becoming. The more you choose to align with what is true and good, the more your life evolves into something purposeful. Another key dimension of transformation is vision. You must have an image of who you could be if you were disciplined, responsible, and fully alive. That vision becomes the target you aim at, the guiding star that pulls you forward. Without vision, transformation is directionless. You wander in circles rather than progressing. But when you set your sights on a clear image of your highest potential, every sacrifice and every struggle becomes meaningful because it is oriented toward a purpose. Transformation is fueled by this vision, by the belief that you can become something greater than your current self. Transformation is not solitary. Though it begins within, its effects radiate outward, shaping your relationships, your family, and your community. As you transform, you become someone others can rely on, someone capable of contributing value. Transformation creates a ripple effect. When one person rises, they inspire and empower others to do the same. In this way, your personal growth becomes a force for collective good. Your transformation is not just for you, it is for the world around you. There is also a spiritual dimension to transformation. At its deepest level, It is not only about achieving more or becoming more competent, but about embodying meaning and aligning with something higher than yourself. Transformation lifts you out of despair and nihilism by connecting you to responsibility, truth, and service. It is the path through which suffering becomes bearable because it is integrated into a larger story of growth. This is why so many traditions throughout history have emphasized transformation. It is the universal journey of human development, the movement from chaos toward order, from weakness toward strength, from ignorance toward wisdom. Ultimately, transformation is ongoing. There is no final destination where you are finished and complete. Human beings are capable of continual growth, and each stage of transformation opens the door to further possibilities. You are always in the process of becoming, and the choice you face daily is whether you will transform upward toward greater strength, wisdom, and meaning, or downward into weakness, resentment, and despair. Transformation is therefore not optional. It is happening already. The only question is whether you will guide it consciously through responsibility, discipline, and truth, or allow it to happen passively, shaped by fear, comfort, and avoidance.